Have you ever stopped to consider why so many men regret entering relationships after turning 50? According to data from the National Statistics Institute, divorce rates among men over 50 have doubled in the past decade. This isn't mere coincidence. What should represent a period of tranquility, stability, and personal freedom transforms into an emotional minefield, saturated with demands, exhaustion, and the erosion of individual identity. The truth that nobody possesses the courage to articulate is straightforward. The majority of men in this age bracket find themselves entangled in relationships that merely drain them. Today, you might recognize that what society labels as companionship is, in practical terms, the silent termination of your autonomy. If you find yourself within this age range or approaching it, pause and listen carefully. These 9 insights could preserve your sanity, your financial resources, and your very existence. Most men beyond 50 enter relationships believing they've discovered a mature, stable partner, ready to experience something meaningful. However, reality frequently reveals that this woman has already participated in the entire game. She has married, separated, raised children, experienced adventures, and now seeks stability. Stability that you represent without realizing it. Not because she admires you, but because she requires a secure harbor after the festivities have ended. You become the safety net, the dependable shoulder, the individual who listens, finances dinners, accepts another's children, and still feels grateful for being present. It's harsh to contemplate this way, but numerous men are utilized as consolation prizes for an inadequately resolved past. Do you know what's worse? Most remain oblivious. They believe they're being chosen when they're actually being tolerated. As Nietzsche would observe, the man who accepts being the second choice has surrendered his will to power, that vital force that drives him to create his own values and assert himself in the world. She has already experienced genuine love, already collided with men she truly desired. Now, all she seeks is predictability, a man who doesn't excite her excessively, but who remains available and submissive. The problem lies in confusing peace with passivity, love with accommodation. You are not her primary choice, you are the safe option. When a man accepts this role, he completely sabotages himself, loses his brilliance, loses his worth, loses respect, because she understands she's with a man who accepted being Plan B, and never truly respects someone who accepts less than they deserve. The woman who perceives you as Plan B will never treat you as a priority. She will demand attention, presence, patience, but won't offer desire, admiration, or genuine devotion. You'll become a functional boyfriend, useful, convenient, perhaps even affectionate, but never essential. Over time, this transforms into resentment. You begin sensing something is wrong, but cannot identify it. The truth is, you're living as an extra in her life while convincing yourself this constitutes love. Authentic love doesn't place you in the background, much less transform you into an emotional prisoner. Men over 50 should be harvesting rewards, not becoming emotional crutches for frustrated women. Yet due to scarcity, fear of solitude, or vanity, many launch themselves into unbalanced relationships, thinking they're beginning anew. They're not. They're repeating cycles of emotional submission disguised as maturity. Nietzsche would speak here of the last man, that being who has lost all ambition for greatness and settles for mediocrity, seeking only comfort and avoiding any conflict that might elevate him. This phenomenon is more common than you imagine. Daily, thousands of mature men are ensnared by women who don't want love. They want guarantees. After 50, most men have achieved certain financial stability, owned homes, paid off vehicles, solid retirement plans, or fixed income. For some women, this resonates louder than any conversation about love. They don't seek a companion. They want an immediate provider. You enter the relationship with good faith, wanting companionship. She enters with calculation. How much can this man offer me? We're not discussing only direct money. We're addressing comfort, status, travel, restaurants, and even favors for her family. Gradually, you begin perceiving that you're paying more than you should, but you're already too involved to retreat. When you attempt to reduce expenses, emotional blackmail follows. You've changed. Now you're stingy. You weren't like this before. This type of woman doesn't want to build you up. She wants to consume you. You become a sort of walking credit card without realizing it. Every weekend brings new expenses, new necessities, urgent problems that only you can resolve. Worse still, everything is disguised as affection. She knows how to make you feel important while emptying you inside and out. No genuine reciprocity exists. You pay for everything and still hear that this is the minimum a mature man does. Affection comes conditioned on your utility. When you cease being useful, affection disappears. The relationship becomes a bill to pay. Each month she charges more emotional interest. She doesn't love you. She manages you, controls your schedules, your decisions, even your friendships. After all, you are her investment. Like any investment, she wants returns, gifts, favors, stability, and control. You're no longer a free man. You're a provider disguised as a boyfriend. Here, Nietzsche would remind us that the superior man must create his own values, not submit to values imposed by others. When you accept this role of provider without reciprocity, you're denying your own creative nature and submitting to a slave morality that keeps you in mediocrity. Worse yet, when you begin recognizing this and take a stand, she accuses you of being selfish, cold, or insensitive to her needs. This forms part of the psychological game, keeping you confused, guilty, and obedient. You need to understand one thing. Generosity without criteria becomes exploitation. There's nothing wrong with wanting to care for someone. The problem is being used, and at 50 and beyond, you no longer have time to waste with people who only want what you have, not who you are. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, nor pay dearly to be accepted. A healthy relationship doesn't come with emotional invoices, doesn't arrive with charges or veiled threats. Either mutual reciprocity and admiration exist, or it's merely affective parasitism. A very common illusion exists among mature men. The idea that after 40 or 50 women are more balanced, calmer, and ready to experience something healthy. But reality shows that many of them, instead of maturing, have become more controlling and inflexible. They're not seeking a partner to add value. They're searching for a man who will adjust perfectly to the rules they impose. You don't enter the relationship as an individual. You enter as a project. She wants to mold you, correct you, improve you. What should be an exchange between two adults becomes a disguised struggle for emotional territory. Every decision, every routine, every conversation needs to pass through her filter. The truth is that many mature women don't want a companion. They want an emotional subordinate. She comes from traumas, disappointments, relationships where she felt powerless, and now wants to compensate by commanding you. You cannot disagree, cannot have your own routine, cannot have individual space. Everything needs approval, justification, negotiation. If you assert yourself, she accuses you of being authoritarian, chauvinistic, or insensitive. She plays with modern discourse but fundamentally seeks total control within the relationship. Worse still, all this happens subtly through small concessions that become patterns. You begin yielding on simple matters. A restaurant she prefers, a schedule she imposes, a trip she decides. After some time, you realize your life has been hijacked. She decides where you go, with whom you associate, what's right or wrong. You find yourself silent, passive, accepting things you would never have accepted before. Worst of all, thinking this signals maturity or commitment. But surrendering everything isn't maturity. It's weakness masked as peace. One of the greatest values a man conquers after 50 is freedom. Freedom of time, thought, routine, choices. But what many don't perceive is that upon entering a relationship at this stage, that freedom begins slipping through their fingers. What replaces it? An avalanche of small obligations disguised as care, companionship, and commitment. You realize your schedules are no longer yours, your travels depend on her approval, your Sundays have fixed itineraries. Without realizing it, you return to living as if you were 30, but now with much less patience and much more demands. The problem is that, unlike a young relationship where everything is novelty, at this stage routine becomes demand in record time. You no longer have that energy to adapt to others' wills every day. But she expects exactly that. She expects you to be always available, always attentive, always willing to participate in her world. If you attempt to maintain some personal space, accusations follow. You're cold. You don't want to build anything with me. Gradually, you find yourself saying more yeses than you'd like to avoid friction that wears you down further. Only each yes you give against your will is another brick in the wall of your frustration. Here enters the most dangerous point. The man begins repressing himself to maintain peace. He stops going out with friends, practicing hobbies, having moments of silence. He molds himself to her expectations and forgets his own identity. Until one day he looks in the mirror and no longer recognizes who he is. Worse, he realizes he can no longer make decisions without consulting someone. For a mature man, this is suffocating. It's a type of prison that comes with the scent of romance. A lie exists, repeated so many times that many men begin believing it, that with time they lose value while women gain wisdom. But reality is exactly the opposite. At 50 and beyond, a man enters the pinnacle of his social and emotional attractiveness. You possess maturity, resources, composure, and most importantly, freedom. Things that 25-year-old boys don't have. The problem is that many men don't realize this. They still see themselves as if they were at a disadvantage, begging for attention. Meanwhile, women who have already lived through various phases begin competing for the few available mature men and use manipulation, charm, and neediness to trap you in the role of emotional savior. The woman who reaches 50 with accumulated frustrations knows time isn't on her side. She has lost part of the seductive power she possessed in youth, but still carries the expectation of being treated as if she were the only option. Therefore, she will attempt to compensate through demands and emotional manipulation. She needs to convince you that you need her, that being with her represents a great opportunity. If you're emotionally unprepared, you'll fall for that narrative and accept a relationship where only one side must prove value. You'll be tested constantly while she acts as if she's doing you a favor. But stop and think. Why do you, who have conquered so many things, still feel obligated to prove yourself? Perhaps because nobody taught you that the mature man is a valued man, not a disposable one. You don't need to accept any relationship just because you're alone. You don't need to prove anything to someone who doesn't even know how to recognize who you are. The problem is that many mature men still carry insecurities from youth and end up surrendering themselves to women who know how to exploit that. As Nietzsche would say about the Superman, the game changes when you understand that true power lies in choosing, not in begging for attention. The superior man creates his own values and doesn't submit to others' expectations. Meanwhile, she also perceives that you're in an ascending phase, not declining. You can travel alone, go out when you want, start over, meet people, experiment with new versions of yourself. She knows this, and therefore wants to trap you emotionally as soon as possible. Not because she truly loves you, but because she fears you'll discover the man you can become. The truth is harsh. She doesn't want you to evolve. She wants you to accommodate, to accept, to remain silent, because the more authentic you become, the harder it will be for her to control you. After decades of working, struggling, raising children, or overcoming problems, all that's expected is a lighter phase. But when you become involved with the wrong woman, what should be calm transforms into an unstable emotional battlefield. Minor issues become major discussions. The climate is never constant. Everything depends on her mood, her needs, and her insecurities. What should be mature companionship becomes an emotional soap opera with daily episodes. And you're always the villain. She feels neglected. It's your fault. She feels insecure. It's because you don't give her attention. There's always a new drama waiting for you. Initially, you even try to understand, give attention, listen, attempt dialogue. But over time, you realize that no matter how much you strive, it's never enough. She needs constant crisis to feel alive. She needs emotional chaos to feel in control. And you gradually begin feeling drained. The strong, centered, mature man gives way to a reactive and exhausted subject. You live walking on eggshells, avoiding triggers you didn't even know existed, and realize you're in an emotional war against someone who claims to love you. Many men don't perceive they're trapped in a cycle of emotional dependency. She creates a problem, generates tension, then makes peace as if it were a prize. This cycle is addictive. You begin thinking this is the natural pattern of a relationship, but it isn't. This is subtle emotional abuse, a psychological game that traps you in exhaustion and prevents clear thinking. You no longer have mental peace, cannot focus on your projects, and begin losing taste for your own routine. Everything revolves around avoiding her next emotional collapse. Here comes the truth. Few have the courage to say, the woman who lives in drama doesn't want solutions. She wants attention. She doesn't want to resolve conflicts. She wants to feed the cycle, because that puts her at the center. If you don't participate in the show, she accuses you of being cold, absent, or insensitive. You cannot remain centered because she feeds on your imbalance. When you finally explode, she uses that as proof that you're the problem. It's a dirty game. Worst of all, many men enter it without realizing. Few people discuss this, but a direct connection exists between chronic emotional stress and accelerated aging. Do you know where that stress lives? In unbalanced, tense relationships, full of demands. At 50 or 60, your body and mind no longer have the same resistance as before. Everything you experience, including the emotional part, has a deeper and more lasting impact. When you become involved with a woman who demands too much, complains constantly, and lives in imbalance, the result is singular: exhaustion. You sleep less, become more irritated, lose focus, and even feel your body heavier. This type of toxic relationship doesn't destroy at once. It corrodes gradually. You begin feeling constant fatigue, pains that didn't exist before, and a generalized loss of spirit. Your vital energy disappears, replaced by a state of constant alert. None of this comes from work or age. It comes from the woman beside you, because she doesn't add, she drains. The price of this is silent, internal aging. While you should be living with lightness, you're merely surviving. There's more. Many men, when entering a stressful relationship, abandon themselves. They stop training, caring for their nutrition, maintaining healthy habits. Emotional tension steals motivation. Routine becomes burden. That man who once enjoyed taking care of himself, going out, renewing himself, begins languishing emotionally. The reflection appears in the mirror. More marked wrinkles, more tired expression, dimmed gaze. He doesn't even realize that the root of all this is the woman he insists on keeping by his side. A relationship shouldn't make you sick. It should heal you. But for that to happen, harmony, mutual admiration, and most importantly, mental peace must exist. Without peace, your body lives in a defensive state. Your mind doesn't rest, your soul doesn't express itself, and the result is aging that goes far beyond appearance. You lose brightness, lose motivation, lose clarity, and gradually stop being yourself, transforming into a shadow of the man you could be. Many mature men enter relationships believing they'll find a woman with emotional baggage and maturity. But what frequently happens is the opposite. They end up beside emotionally needy, unstable, and demanding women. The role she expects you to play isn't that of a companion. It's therapist, motivator, counselor, and on top of that, always available. She wants a man who is emotionally 100% available to listen, embrace, resolve, and endure all the time. It doesn't matter if you had a bad day, if you're tired, or if you don't want to talk. She demands total emotional presence, and any sign of your fatigue is read as coldness, rejection, or lack of love. This type of demand creates invisible but powerful exhaustion. You cannot fail, cannot remain silent, cannot withdraw. She transforms your emotional presence into personal fuel. If you're well, she's well. If you fall silent, she enters crisis. This makes you become a sort of emotional support column for her life. Only nobody can sustain another person emotionally every day, all the time. You begin feeling guilty for not always being in control of her emotional situation. There's an even more perverse detail. She never takes responsibility for her own imbalances. She always has an external motive: work, children, ex-husband, fatigue, anxiety. But you're the only one who needs to be strong all the time. She demands resistance from you but doesn't offer balance. She demands support, but doesn't give support. You become an unpaid psychologist, an emotional caregiver who has no space even to care for himself. All this disguised as companionship. Have you worked enough? Have you lived through social pressures? Have you had to please others for decades? Now should be the moment to live for yourself. Do what you like. Go where you want. Say what you think, with total freedom. But when you enter a relationship with the wrong woman, all this silently disappears. Because she doesn't just want to be with you. She wants to occupy all your space of time, energy, and attention. You begin realizing your life is no longer yours. She doesn't understand that at this stage you value silence more than empty conversations. She doesn't understand that for you, being at peace has more value than being right. So any choice of yours that doesn't include her becomes grounds for conflict. Want to travel alone? Selfishness. Want to remain quiet on the weekend? Indifference. Want to say no to an invitation? Neglect. Everything is interpreted as rejection, because what she really wants is to possess your time, as if it were hers. Gradually, you realize you're living under emotional surveillance. After 50, the game changes, time accelerates, priorities become clearer. It's precisely because of this that you can no longer enter relationships with the same naivety as before. The wrong woman at this stage doesn't just delay your life. She consumes you from within. You lose energy, lose focus, lose years trying to adapt to someone who will never respect you as a man. All in the name of companionship that, in practice, costs you freedom, health, and identity. But the truth is simple and brutal. If the price of the relationship is losing yourself, it was never worth it. You need to understand that not being with someone isn't failure. It's emotional intelligence. Today, millions of men live better alone than poorly accompanied. They travel, undertake ventures, take care of themselves, live with lightness, do what they want, without justifying themselves to anyone. Meanwhile, others, prisoners of a romantic idea of having someone beside them, spend their best years extinguishing others' emotional fires. It's not loneliness to remain alone. Loneliness is being with someone who makes you feel invisible. At 50 or 60, you no longer have time to play that game. As Nietzsche would say about the transvaluation of all values, what you need now isn't a girlfriend. It's self-respect, emotional clarity, and complete freedom. You need peace, purpose, direction. You need to reconnect with your essence, with your plans, with your masculine strength. The world is still there for you, full of experiences, conquests, friendships, passions, and freedom. But everything begins with one decision. Stop delivering your life to someone who doesn't know what to do with it. When you do that, true masculine value flourishes. If any of these 9 points made sense to you, leave a comment with the phrase, "My freedom comes first." Like the video, share it with a brother who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. Here we speak the truth that nobody has the courage to say.